Today on the CTV News at 5.
Will you show leadership tonight?
Holding their ground. The party leaders go head-to-head, but was there a real winner? Plus, concern over vandals hitting the election campaign trail too.
I'm so proud of this course.
And Paradise Canyon Golf Course celebrates its 20th year under new ownership.
CTV News with Jackie Scantlebury.
Good afternoon. It was the most anticipated election debate in recent memory in Alberta. As for the proverbial knockout punch, though, that many were expecting, it simply wasn't there. One political expert says all the leaders did reasonably well. Mount Royal University's Lori Williams says it was clear Alison Redford did a good job holding her own in last night's leader debate. She says the other leaders came down hard on her over MLA compensation, transitional allowances, and the no pay committee scandal.
Alison Redford reinforced the impression that I think a lot of polls have indicated. People think she's going to be a good leader, somebody who will acquit herself well and represent Alberta effectively, nationally and even internationally. I think she did a very good job of that.
That Raj Sherman was not as focused on what his party would do, not as clear on how he would manage the policies that he was talking about, and not terribly focused on some of the areas where he really wants to look at what's wrong with the other parties, the policies that they have put forward, and how the Liberals would offer a better alternative.
Williams says Danielle Smith was effective despite the fact she's the least experienced debater. There were 3 direct exchanges between the frontrunners, which Albertans wanted to see. Williams says NDP leader Brian Mason was focused, he stuck to the issues and challenged the other leaders on their policies. No personal criticisms.
Herself as perhaps a little bit less frightening, a little bit more human than some people might have been concerned. On the other hand, I think there were a couple of places where she got caught out, where the other parties really landed zingers.
The strongest performance was put in by Brian Mason. He's a veteran debater. He was very focused on the issues, not getting too much into the calling into question the character or the history of individuals, but
Now, of course, Lethbridge East MLA Bridget Pasteur made headlines earlier this year with her decision to cross the floor, a decision that made its way into last night's leaders' debate as well.
I think that when we look at people in your caucus who you actually paid to cross the floor, that there are serious questions with respect to integrity that Albertans deserve an answer to.
Well, I would say that with respect to your most recent allegation, I think you know that every party transfers money to from the provincial level to candidates. I would ask you whether or not you passed any over to Bridget Pasteur to be able to fund her election campaign.
We absolutely did not, and thank you for asking me the question.
We did 100.
Pasteur claims, despite claims to the contrary, she has not received any money before or since from the PC party to cross the floor or run her campaign. The move hasn't come without its criticisms, though. This defaced sign was found by her campaign team yesterday, accusing Pasteur of being a traitor for her decision. Pasteur says she was surprised to hear her name surface last night.
Well, wasn't I flattered? I'm the only one that got my name on the leaders' debate, national as well. So yeah, absolutely, I was surprised. And I was even more surprised because I didn't get any money for crossing at all. Not in the way that they did, and they had got their money before they crossed. So yeah, it was kind of flattering, wasn't it? Thank you, Danielle.
Pasteur says she is concerned by the negative tone the election has taken. Liberal leader Raj Sherman says he wants to make changes to the way the legislature operates.
MLA should be free to vote according to your wishes.
Sherman was in Lethbridge this afternoon to announce his plans to allow MLAs to vote freely on issues that are outside contract with the Alberta Liberals without a recourse. Sherman says he feels good about his showing at last night's debate, but like Pasteur, he's concerned at the tone of the election.
Well, I'm disappointed that the 2 right-wing parties are having this nasty divorce that's actually detracting from the real issues at hand. Last night, nobody got to know how Danielle Smith is going to fix the healthcare system. We didn't really have much time to debate about that. So they've been just slinging mud at one another. I want to focus on the issues.
Sherman says he considers the Liberals' campaign platform a binding contract with Albertans. And it appears that vandals are hitting the campaign trail too. The NDP candidate for Lethbridge West says she was surprised to learn signs were being taken from supporters' lawns. Mason Pride was out for an early morning walk when he noticed a black pickup truck loading NDP signs into the back and then driving away. He says it happened along 6th Avenue South. Shannon Phillips says her sign crews have replaced signs that were cut or broken by vandals, but was surprised when Pride showed her the photos of the incident.
I was out for a walk at like 2 in the morning, just couldn't sleep, and saw like a black truck pull up and just yanking signs out of the ground basically. And looking over, and I couldn't quite figure it out because I thought it was a bit early to be taking signs out for the election. And they're all NDP signs, and they're putting them in the back of a truck. So I mean, it wasn't a bunch of kids running around and like just kicking them or anything. It was like targeted basically.
I'm not going to speculate on who's behind it. All I'm going to say is we are replacing them. We're running a very, very strong campaign. We're very organized, and we know when they get taken down, they will go right back up.
Phillips says she's keeping focused on running a clean campaign and will continue to replace signs as needed along the campaign trail. If you like variety, Dory Rossiter, this is a good weekend. We're going to have some rain, and then it's going to be dry.
Yeah, and not necessarily in that order.
Okay.
We've got a real mixed bag, and I'll try to peel it back, give you the details in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Dory. Thanks, Dory. Cardston RCMP are investigating an unusual death at a local bank. The body of a 26-year-old standoff woman was found in the bloody interior of the Cardston First Choice Savings and Credit Union last Sunday. Police say video surveillance tapes show the woman breaking into the bank by smashing some glass, and she accidentally cut her wrist in the process. That was around 5 o'clock Sunday morning. By the time an employee discovered the woman around noon, she had already bled to death. RCMP don't believe that the death is a suicide, but they say that drugs or alcohol may have been factors. A Taber businessman will be sentenced in May on charges of internet luring and accessing child pornography. Court was told that 43-year-old Curtis David Parody posed as a 20-year-old man to establish an online relationship with a 16-year-old girl in the United States. He then convinced the girl to perform sexual acts on a webcam. Sentencing arguments were presented in Taber today, and as Terry Vogt reports, the Crown and Parody's lawyer have much different opinions on how severe the penalty should be.
Curtis Parody left the courthouse only minutes after issuing a tearful apology, saying he's extremely sorry for what he had done, telling the judge he had thought about suicide but doesn't want to hurt his family and friends any more than he already has. Special Prosecutor Nadine Nesbitt says Parody, a former chair of the Taber Police Commission, used the internet to disguise and misrepresent himself as a 20-year-old man, grooming his 16-year-old victim, and by lying, trickery, and manipulation was able to exploit a naive adolescent. Nesbitt called for an 18-month jail sentence.
These investigations are very difficult to investigate, and they're difficult to prosecute. People think they're anonymous on the internet, but they're not. And we will find you, and we will prosecute you.
All of Mr. Parody's actions from the moment he was arrested led to this point to show that he's taken what he's done seriously, that he wishes to make amends. He's not trying to hide behind anything. He was upfront and honest from day one with the police.
Defense lawyer Doug Carl says while he expects Parody will spend some time in jail, he called for the judge to consider imposing part of the time to be served as a conditional sentence. Carl says his client has already started counseling and is receiving treatment on his own for sex addiction.
We are extremely hopeful, and we believe that on the law and the facts and merely just the personal circumstances which were played out there today in court, that a conditional sentence is a tool that the judge hopefully will consider.
Following the sentencing arguments, the Crown withdrew a number of the charges that Parody had been facing. They admit there was no evidence that Parody saved the web video on his computer or that he had possessed or distributed other forms of child pornography. Judge Derek Redmond has reserved his decision. He says he'll now take all of the sentencing arguments into consideration and hand down his decision on May 22nd. Terry Vogt, CTV News, Taber.
Court was told that Parady's business has suffered, partly because of publicity surrounding the charges. The third-generation auto business closed its doors at the end of March. Parady's wife and family were among nearly 30 people at court to show their support for Parady. A Lethbridge funeral home director still doesn't know whether he'll lose his funeral director's license. Today, Ralph Zettner and his lawyer appeared at an Alberta Funeral Services Regulatory Board hearing in Edmonton to determine the fate of Zettner's funeral director embalmer license. Wednesday, the owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home was handed a conditional discharge after pleading guilty to fraud under $5,000. The discharge included probation, community service, and fines. Police allege that Zettner and his wife billed the government for scattering or burying ashes of homeless people, but didn't actually do it or inflated the cost. Zettner's license could be canceled or suspended. An investigator for the regulatory board also presented their findings at the day-long hearing. And the last we checked, the hearing was still continuing. Well, divers with the Calgary Fire Department have recovered the body of a man whom they believe to be a 74-year-old ice fisherman from Calgary who drowned near Nanton. RCMP say when the man didn't return home Wednesday, his family went searching for him. They found his vehicle at Chain Lakes near Nanton. Police later found footprints and sled marks leading to an open hole in the ice, and it's believed that he fell through. He was an experienced ice fisherman. His name has not been released. A 35-year-old Medicine Hat man faces charges of stealing nearly $200,000 from his employer. Medicine Hat Major Crimes Unit arrested the man and then investigated his employment at Cenovus Energy. He worked at the company between 2009 and 2010. The man was released from custody and will be in court May 23rd to face charges of fraud and uttering a forged document. A Redcliffe couple may be reconsidering the dog door installed on their home after a coyote snuck in. Fish and Wildlife, along with RCMP, found the animal hiding in the porch. It was captured without injuries to either itself or the homeowner and was eventually released in a rural area. To the markets now. It was a down day for the dollar. Here are the final numbers.